Hi, I'm Bob James. I'm one of the most sampled artists in the world. And you can have the possibility of sampling my music yourself through TrackLib. I think Nautilus has been sampled so much because of the groove. Yes, my little hook, but the groove, that's the magic. I recorded this little vamp thing that I had come up with because I was always looking for a cool bass line for Gary King, my bass player, to play. So we kind of built that into groove. The song felt really good. At that time, it didn't even have a title. I was experimenting around with ARP synthesizers at that time, and I came up with some kind of weird atmosphere sound in the intro, and my producer Creed Taylor said, "That sounds like a submarine to me." And so from that, I'm pretty sure it was Creed that realized that a very famous submarine was called Nautilus. Little did I know at that time that eventually Nautilus would end up finding its way into the hip-hop world. I'm told that it's up into the 1,000 categories, and I got to give credit for both Idris Muhammad and Gary King, who made it feel so good. My little bass line, it's one thing to write it, but until the right magical player performs it, that's what makes people's ears gravitate toward it. The sample world deals with short chunks that have their own rhythm and can be repeated. That was definitely an aspect of my recording of Take Me to the Mardi Gras. The intro, we were only just establishing an immediate mood, an immediate vibe, an immediate identity, and apparently we did a good job of it. I was at that time a big fan of Paul Simon, and both of us were represented by the same manager, Michael Tannen. So it kind of made sense for me to look for something from Paul Simon's repertoire to record. I hired Ralph McDonald. I may have said, "Hey Ralph, give me that Mardi Gras spirit." And so he basically played this fairly traditional sounding Latin American go-go bell rhythm, and we liked it. Way after the fact, that chunk, that sample, had its own name, the Bells. And now I even see it, hip-hop radio station, they're called the Bells. Crazy. Can I explain it? No way. But little by little, that life that it had and that identifiable sound resonated in this amazing way with the hip-hop community, and I love it. Well, I loved being in the middle of trying to have any kind of a conversation with Biz Markie. I became aware that he was going back and forth with Questlove, and they were both arguing about my recording of Take Me to the Mardi Gras, and Biz Markie was claiming at that time that he alone had this secret recording that did not have these bells on it. And even though it's possible these days technically to do some pretty crazy things where you could filter out elements of a recording, just the exact frequencies. It may have been possible for that to be done, but I could say categorically, since it was my recording, there was no mix, remix, or anything else like that in which the bells were left out. Biz, I love the fact that you have this kind of mystery storyline and maybe adding to the lore of Take Me to the Mardi Gras. So I don't want to disabuse you of the debate that you guys are having. I'll just say that I'm glad it got sampled, and I'm just glad to be a part of Go-Go Bell history. Ralph was always very prominent on my recordings, and we worked together in the studio in so many different ways. Sometimes I was a sideman on his sessions, and sometimes he was a sideman on my sessions. In this particular case with Take Me to the Mardi Gras, I was the beneficiary of having hired him, and to whatever degree that magic go-go bell part paid off, I got the fringe benefit of it being the owner of the copyright on my recording. But almost at the same time, there was a recording that I was very much involved with by Grover Washington Jr. called Mr. Magic. And on Mr. Magic, Ralph McDonald happened to be the composer and the owner of the copyright of the song, Mr. Magic. So when Mr. Magic got sampled by hip hop artists, and it was very, very widely sampled too, but it wasn't my copyright, it wasn't my album, it was Grover Washington's album, and I was only the arranger. Similarly to Ralph was only the percussionist on my Take Me to Mardi Gras. So on Mr. Magic, I got no royalties because I had no ownership. And I was paid as an arranger in the same way that Ralph was paid as the percussion guy on my record. So I kind of rationalized it in that way, that Ralph got the benefit of my vamp on his song, and I definitely got the benefit of his percussion playing Take Me to the Mardi Gras. Angela became iconic mostly because of the success of Taxi. When I perform it live, there's a very interesting aspect of it to me. When I play the very beginning, I get an applause from my audience who are familiar with it from the very first moment that they hear the sound. But it is not the melody, it's just the intro. But then 8 measures later, my melody comes in. And I get another applause. So there's a kind of a double whammy recognition applause from my fans or from my audience that just warms my heart and makes me feel good. And no matter who I've got playing with me in my band, we look at each other at that moment and smile, because it's one of those times when you have a kind of immediate bonding with your audience. One of the producers of a brand new TV sitcom described one of the first episodes to me, and Judd Hirsch, who played the lead character, he's nervous about meeting with the telephone answering service lady, and since her name in that episode was Angela, I just put this title of Angela on this music cue. So I recorded it, and very soon after that, the producer approached me and said, "Bob, we think this piece fits the mood of what we're trying to establish as the opening credits and as the vibe of our show." As soon as I saw the shot that they had made of the taxi going across the bridge at dusk in this kind of mellow way, then I could see why the producers liked this piece of mine that randomly found this life that turned out to be played thousands and thousands of times when the show became successful and it was syndicated all over the world. And I found out that this background music composition, which I called Angela, took on a crazy, wonderful life. Westchester Lady, I was just trying to come up with some line for my bass player, Gary King, to play, and I came up with this I thought it would be fun for him to play. And I had a little piano melody that I came up with. I had finished the instrumental recording. We knew the track was sounding really great, but I had this dream that came to me after the fact. I wonder what it would be like to have a vocal on it. And so in my head, I heard this phrase, "What you gonna do, Westchester Lady?" And it was like, "What you gonna do, Westchester Lady?" So I told Creed Taylor about having this idea and what would he think about bringing in a vocal ensemble. Creed Taylor at that time, even when I brought it up, said, "Bob, I don't know, you're a jazz piano player. It's not that kind of an album." But he let me do it, he indulged me, and so I put together a group, background vocalist, that happened to include several singers who later, after that, became very, very successful. But at that time, they were basically just studio background singers. And 2 of them happened to be Patti Austin and Luther Vandross. And they're listening on headphones, and we did this background vocal, "What you gonna do, Westchester Lady?" And Luther Vandross, of course, is magical. Everything he sang was completely magical. But after the session, somewhat reluctantly, but also instinctively, we kind of felt that we already had a great sounding instrumental record, and we put the vocal aside. Westchester Lady came out, and it did not have Luther Vandross and Patti Austin singing on it. And years later, again, both of them came to me, especially Luther, who said, "Bob, you really messed up. If you'd kept me on there, you'd have had a really big hit." We attempted many, many years later to find those background vocals. We have not been able to come up with them, unfortunately. Storm King's been sampled a lot. In fact, it was kind of controversial, songs that got sampled successfully without licensing. Well, I wish I could report that I have photographic memory or phonographic memory. I've been around long enough, and I've been lucky enough to be involved in so many different things, recording. And if you're asking me about Storm King, I have to humbly admit that I don't remember very much about it at all. It had a pretty simple vamp that was easy to sample in short chunks. As I look back on it, I wish that the usage had been more legitimately licensed, the way I expect that TrackLib will be handling this in a totally different way. And I would love it if some new hip-hop TrackLib artist does it again, where we're really collaborating in above the table kind of way. And hopefully we can both be happy with some new sample.